everyone, this is Anna from SavvyCat Realty, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the D7 visa and the new digital nomad visa. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each of these visas? So as the new digital nomad visa has came out, there has been kind of a panic around the immigration services, because around the same time that it was launched in November 2022, and in December 2022, they decided to start imposing restrictions on the D7 visa, but through the banks. This doesn't make any sense from an outside perspective, but I'm going to try and shine some light on the situation. So basically, the CEF services in Portugal, the immigration services in Portugal, are a bit of a mess. The government announced they were going to close CEF and rebrand it, turn it into a new agency, which could be a good thing if it was done right. But in fact, what has been happening is that situation has been in limbo for almost 3 years now, and no one really knows if the CEF is going to stay open or closed, and no new hirings are being done to the immigration services, to the CEF services, even though the demand and the amount of immigration has only been going up. So the CEF services are in absolute chaos, are absolutely late in everything, and it's very hard to get everything moving. So amidst this whole situation, the government decided to release a new visa. But because they knew they couldn't change the regulations through CEF because CEF is a mess, they decided to start restricting access to the pre-existing D7 visa through the banks. So regulation was sent through the Portugal bank, basically to all the banks operating in Portugal, and making them responsible to restrict access to bank accounts to foreigners depending on the kind of visa they were going to request. So because having a Portuguese bank account is a requirement to get a visa, now you cannot comply with that requirement because the banks won't let you open a bank account unless you comply with regulations. So that brings us down to the D7 versus the digital nomad visa. Technically, the D7 does the same thing that the digital nomad visa used to do, with the difference that the D7 does require you to stay in the country for at least 6 months per year, while the digital nomad visa is flexible on that. Now, there is another very big difference on the requirements from the D7 and the digital nomad visa. That is the amount of income that is required. So digital nomad visa requires a minimum income of 2,820 euros monthly, while the D7 visa is a self-sustenance visa and only requires you to have an income equivalent to the minimum salary in Portugal. So that is around 700 euros. You can see it's a very drastic difference between the two. And the D7, by definition, can technically be requested both by active income earners and passive income earners. So this means that it can be requested by retirees and people that live off passive income like property income and dividends and so on. But it can also be requested used to be able to be requested by people that had paid salaries and job positions active. However, these new bank restrictions make it so that if you have an active income, you won't be able to open a bank account towards the D7 visa. You are forced to go to the digital nomad visa that has this much higher income request. The tax on both of these visas on active income is actually the same. It's 20%, which seems like a lot, but in reality is a lot less than what us Portuguese people pay. So taxes in Portugal are generally horrible. This new digital nomad visa is a lot more demanding and restrictive regarding documentation. So I'm going to read to you the documentation that is required for the D7 visa. And on top of that, the digital nomad visa has some extra requirements. So for the D7 visa, you need the passport or another valid travel document, 2 identical passport sized photos with black background and easily identifiable, a valid travel insurance with coverage of all medical insurance, including urgent medical assistance and possible repatriation, clear criminal register in the European Union and in your country of origin, and you also need a proof of adequate accommodation. And this is one of those tricky parts. Proof of adequate accommodation can be a rental. And this very much depends embassy by embassy. So some embassies, the US embassies for example, they tend to ask for at least 1 year rental, while some other embassies, like for example the Brazilian embassy, only requests for a 3 months rental as proof of adequate accommodation. Proof of adequate accommodation can also be a Portuguese person housing you under compromise of honor. If this happens, that person needs to have the ability to house you adequately on top of their own household. So let's imagine if it's a family of 4 living in a 2-bedroom, the application will be rejected by SEF because there's already 4 people living in a 2-bedroom. However, if it's a family of 4 and the applicant is a couple, but it's a 3-bedroom, it may get approved. But the housing is usually not the best strategy to apply for the D7. It's usually better to get a long-term rental or property. Of course, you can also apply buying your own property, and that is of course proof of adequate accommodation. So once you have that cleared, you also need the proof that you have the income that allows you to live in Portugal. So like I was saying, the 700 euros per month. Given the high amount of applications, the SEF tends to prefer higher incomes. And if you do have a lower end income, it is advisable that you have at least a year of savings put into a Portuguese account, and also to have recommendation letter, a proof of character letter attached to your application. We do both of those things for our clients. So the SEF will have all these proofs attached, and regarding the D7 visa, the process is usually initiated on the embassy on the country of origin, and then it is sent out to SEF in order to get everything approved. The new digital nomad visa, on top of everything that I already mentioned, is required for the D7. It also has a very thorough background check on the country and the company you work with. So we'll be checking the number of employees, it will be checking where the company is based, it will be checking contracts, and it will also be checking the finances of the company you work for. So this can be a bit more complicated and bureaucratic when it comes to the work, but overall the process is quite similar, and the income requirements are basically triple of what the requirements are for the D7 visa. Overall, the D7 visa is more advantageous, but the Portuguese government is forcing, it's actually almost quadruple of the income required for the D7. But anyway, I was saying that the D7 visa is overall a lot more advantageous than the digital nomad visa, and they basically do the same. It was, I believe it was mostly a way for the Portuguese government to require a higher income for the expats in Portugal, and also to have this short-term visa side of things in that is not the golden visa. So for a short-term stay, that is not the golden visa, and due to the popularity of remote work in Portugal, it has definitely been a rising trend. So overall, these are the main differences of the two visas, and they can be advantageous depending on your personal situation. They are very similar between them if you have the higher income and your company is willing to provide the documents to go through the loops of the verification. Digital nomad visa can definitely be a good visa for you, and it's already have a lot of digital nomad visas have already been issued, so it's definitely a running process. The application is made exactly the same way. There are just two different types of visa, and it just depends on your own personal situation which one is more advantageous for you. The digital nomad has 4 times the income requirement than the D7, and other than that they are fairly similar. You can apply for the NHR, the non-habitual tax resident, with either of them, as long as you stay a tax resident in Portugal and stay in Portugal for 6 months or more per year. So these are basically the differences between these two visas. I hope that this video was useful. For those of you who don't know, Savicat Realty is a relocation and real estate investment agency that supports in the whole process of coming to from another country to Portugal. And we support in the visa process, the location choice, rentals, purchases, and get everything legally and technical verified by working with lawyers and engineers. If you do want to use our services, feel free to go to our website at www.savicatrealty.com, where everything is listed very transparently, every service and cost that we have. And you can also contact us directly at contact@savicatrealty.com if you do have any specific queries. I hope that this was helpful, and I see you all again next week. Bye.